I was the one who had been betrayed, yet she had the audacity to flip the script and label me a violent psychopath. In a lengthy post, she lamented how oppressive and suffocating our marriage supposedly was, even fabricating stories about my controlling nature and how I had driven her to the brink of despair. Usually, such slander would have prompted an immediate public clarification, but I didn't feel like wasting a single breath on explanations. I simply watched in silence as former clients I had helped began to speak up for me voluntarily, and even my neighbors of many years took to the comments section to testify on my behalf. In the eyes of the public, I had always been a gentle and restrained man, a model husband. The more she tried to drag my name through the mud, the more obvious it became to everyone that she was just panicking to save herself, leading people to question everything she said. I watched from the sidelines like a cold observer, almost professionally admiring the flaws in her narrative. I knew all too well that when someone is spiraling out of control, even their lies lose their polish. I was sitting in the very last row of the theater, holding 2 cups of coffee that were still piping hot, wisps of steam rising from her favorite caramel macchiatos. I had specifically asked the barista for extra caramel because she always complained that this place didn't make them sweet enough. Before I left the house, she told me she had to memorize her script and didn't have time to catch a movie with me. By all accounts, she should have been at home running lines, yet there she was, sitting comfortably 5 rows in front of me. My wife, Olivia, was right there, sitting next to her mentor, Jerry. In the shadows of the theater, I watched as she rested her head on his shoulder. The two of them were huddled close, whispering and laughing every so often. On the screen, an art house film about betrayal and redemption was playing. The irony was almost unbearable. I stared intensely at her familiar silhouette, noticing she was wearing the beige knit cardigan I had given her for her birthday last year. I had carefully selected the softest cashmere because she mentioned how cold it got on set during winter shoots. What was once a gift filled with love had now become her ensemble for an affair. I watched as Jerry's hand settled on her waist, and instead of pulling away, she leaned even closer into him. Then, she looked up, and their lips met. My hand trembled, spilling the hot coffee onto my lap, the scalding liquid instantly snapping me out of my daze. They really were a perfect match, an award-winning director and a rising starlet. In Hollywood, a pairing like this was hardly a surprise. This sort of thing happened all the time in the industry, but this was my wife. After 3 years of marriage, I never imagined I would witness a scene like this in a movie theater. I had always believed our marriage would be quiet, stable, and last a lifetime. I sat there in silence, watching them fawn over each other, wishing desperately that it was all just a nightmare and that everything would vanish when I woke up. Unfortunately, this was reality. As the credits began to roll, the house lights dimmed up slightly. I saw her stand up, and Jerry instinctively pulled her close, his arm draped naturally around her waist as they walked toward the exit, chatting and laughing. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Even though the lighting was dim, it was enough to capture their intimacy with perfect clarity. I waited a long time after they left before I finally stood up. On my way out, I passed a trash can and tossed the 2 warm coffees straight into the bin. It was 9 o'clock by the time I got back to our place in West Hollywood, and the living room was pitch black. It seemed she wasn't home yet. I flipped the light switch and saw her script lying on the coffee table. I opened the first page to find it covered in dense notes and underlinings. She had clearly put a lot of work into this character. The only problem was that she wasn't at home practicing her scenes. She was at the cinema getting cozy with her director. I sat down on the sofa and lit a cigarette. This was our home. Every piece of furniture was something we had picked out together. Over the last 3 years, we had slowly turned this place into a real home, filled with warmth. As the smoke curled in the air, memories began to surface. I met Olivia for the first time at a psychology seminar. Back then, I was still a practicing therapist, and I was giving a talk on stage about handling professional stress. She was sitting right there in the audience. In those days, Olivia was just an unknown extra, someone who couldn't even land a close-up. After the lecture, she approached me for a consultation, claiming that the pressure of the industry was giving her severe anxiety and keeping her up at night. I still remember her as she was then, no makeup, wearing a simple white t-shirt, looking so young and earnest. She eventually became a regular client, and we grew close through our sessions. One thing led to another, and we moved in together and eventually got married. In just a few years, she went from an obscure extra to a somewhat famous young actress. I really thought we would spend the rest of our lives together. But now, everything has been torn apart. I took out my phone and replayed the video I had recorded. Despite the poor lighting, their silhouettes were unmistakable. Seeing them kiss like that felt like a sharp jab to the eyes. I crushed my cigarette in the ashtray and walked into the study. As a therapist, I was acutely aware of my own mental state. Anger, the humiliation of betrayal, and a deep sense of loss were all swirling inside me. I had to force myself to stay calm. I opened my laptop and began researching Jerry. Despite being a big-name director in the industry, his reputation was actually quite sordid. He had long been notorious for casting couch scandals involving newcomers. However, because his films were always award contenders, nobody dared to expose him. He and Olivia had first worked together a few years back when she landed her first lead role. It was that very film that turned her from an unknown nobody into a rising star overnight. I was genuinely happy for her at the time, thinking she had finally caught her big break. Looking back now, that might have been the moment everything started to sour. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I dug up every piece of information I could find about them. Soon, the fragments began to form a clear picture in my mind. Starting last year, Olivia's collaborations with Jerry had become significantly more frequent. It wasn't just films, it was commercial events too. Every time an event ended, they would almost always go out for dinner alone. The paparazzi had even caught them a few times, but since he was her mentor, the public just assumed it was a professional relationship and didn't give a second thought. Looking back now, she really had changed over the last 6 months. She used to be so clingy, always wanted to be near me. Lately, she had been claiming she needed to stay in character, and she was spending less and less time at home. Even our intimacy had noticeably dwindled. Whenever I tried to get close to her, she would just say she was too tired. I scrolled through my phone's photo library and realized that in the last 6 months, there were hardly any pictures of the two of us together. On the contrary, there were plenty of photos of her and Jerry, mostly media shots from various events. In those pictures, she looked radiant and relaxed, far happier than she ever seemed at home with me. I saved every single one of those photos. Time slipped away, and even though it was late, she still wasn't back. I sent her an iMessage asking why she was out so late. She replied almost instantly, saying she had been so deep into her script that she lost track of time and was heading home right then. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. She even had to script her cheating to make it sound flawless. 20 minutes later, the sound of a key turning in the lock broke the silence of the apartment. She stepped inside quietly, but froze when she saw the living room lights were still on. "Lucas, why are you still up?" she asked. Her voice was as gentle as ever, but she couldn't quite hide the flicker of guilt in her eyes. I looked up at her. She was still in that beige cardigan, her makeup perfectly intact. Looking at her now, it was hard to believe she was the same woman I had seen in the theater that afternoon. "Waiting for you," I said with a smile. "How's the script coming along?" "It's okay," she said, sitting down beside me. "It's a tough role to play. I still have a lot of work to do to get it right." I nodded. "Did Jerry give you any pointers today?" Her body went rigid for a split second before she regained her composure. "I didn't see him today. I was here all day with the script. I only stepped out for a walk to clear my head and get into the zone." "Really?" I asked, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Then who is the person in this video?" The color drained from her face instantly. 5 minutes later, Olivia was still sitting frozen on the sofa. On the screen, the video I had taken of her and Jerry getting intimate in the theater played on a continuous loop. "Well, do you have anything to say now?" I asked coldly. Her lips trembled as tears began to stream down her face. "Lucas, I can explain," she sobbed. "Explain what?" I countered. "Explain why you were in a movie theater kissing another man. Or perhaps explain all the lies you have been telling me lately." Seeing her so panicked and pathetic filled me with a sudden, intense wave of loathing. "It's not what you think," she stammered. She lunged forward and grabbed my hand. "Lucas, Jerry and I were just rehearsing," she pleaded. I shoved her away. "Does rehearsing involve kissing in a dark theater? Does it involve him wrapping his arm around your waist?" She finally fell silent, just bowing her head and sobbing. Her tears had ruined her makeup, and she looked utterly wretched. "When did it start?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. She was silent for a long time before she finally whispered, "Last year, after production started on that show." "Exactly as I thought." I nodded. "So for an entire year, you've been screwing around with him behind my back?" "It wasn't like that," she cried, looking at me with pleading eyes. "In the beginning, it was just a normal professional relationship. But then he was so good to me, he'd give me one-on-one coaching and take me to all these industry dinners and events. And I suppose you were happy to throw yourself into his arms in return." I cut her off coldly. She bit her lip. "I know I hurt you, but I really do love you." "Love me?" I let out a mocking laugh. "Were you thinking about how much you loved me while you were in bed with another man?" "I didn't," she shrieked, her emotions boiling over. "Jerry and I never went that far." I stood up from a sofa and looked down at her with cold eyes. "You really think I'm that naive?" I pulled up my photo library and started scrolling through the evidence. October of last year, you two were out at dinner until 2 in the morning. This February, while filming on location in Hungary, you were still in his trailer at 1 o'clock in the morning. In April, you went on a trip together and stayed on the same floor of the same hotel. Are you going to tell me you were just rehearsing then, too? Her face turned ashen bit by bit. "You've been spying on me?" she whispered. "No, irrevolia coldly. I only started looking into this today. You know, as a therapist, my specialty is analyzing behavioral changes in people. I noticed every single one of your red flags. I just didn't want to believe the worst of you." She suddenly lunged at me, grabbing my legs. "Lucas, please forgive me. I know I messed up. I'll never see him again, I promise." I let her cling to me, but my voice was chillingly cold. "Do you know what I hate most in this world?" She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "The one thing I cannot tolerate is being lied to." I spoke slowly, emphasizing every word. "For 3 years, I gave you my whole heart. Meanwhile, you were playing the role of the loving wife in public while carrying on with another man behind my back. Do you honestly think there is any reason to save this marriage?" "No, please don't," she sobbed, completely breaking down. "Lucas, give me one more chance. I know I was wrong. I'll make it up to you. I'll be the best wife." I leaned down and gently wiped the tears from her face. "It's too late." With those words, I went into the study and returned with a folder. It was the divorce settlement I'd had my lawyer draft that afternoon. "Read it," I said, tossing the papers onto the coffee table. "Since you cheated, you aren't legally entitled to a dime. However, I'm offering you 5% of our assets as a parting gift for the years we spent together. If you find the terms acceptable, sign it." Her hands were shaking as she picked up the papers. She scanned them quickly before slamming them back down on the floor. "No, I won't divorce you. Lucas, please, just this once, forgive me. I swear I'll never make the same mistake again." I picked the papers up off the floor, my voice calm to the point of being cold. "Do you remember our wedding vows? You told me you'd love only me for the rest of your life. Looking back, that promise was just as hollow as the guarantees you're giving me now." She lunged at me again, clinging to me. "No, I do love you. I was lost during that time. Lost enough to go find another man." I scoffed, pushing her away. "Save the performance, Olivia. We both know acting is your specialty. Did you and Jerry rehearse this little breakdown beforehand, too?" She froze, her tears continuing to flow. "How can you be so heartless?" she whispered. "I am heartless." I let out a laugh. "If the roles were reversed, and I was the one who betrayed our marriage, what would you do? Would you forgive me?" She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "Since you can't even say the word, stop asking for it. Sign the papers, and let's stop wasting time." I thrust the settlement toward her. "Sign it. I'm done wasting my time." She looked up at me with eyes full of despair. "Is there really no way to fix this?" "None at all," I said firmly. "The second you betrayed me, This marriage was over. At 3 in the morning, Olivia finally signed the papers. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and her hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. To me, it just looked like another part of her performance. I'll have my lawyer handle the notarization tomorrow and start the formal proceedings, I said as I filed the papers away. Take the next few days to pack your things. I'll be staying at a hotel in the meantime. She sat on the sofa like a hollowed-out puppet. Are you really going to be this cold? She asked. I couldn't help but laugh. Who's the cruel one here? Is it me for leaving, or you for betraying us first? She kept her head down, unable to find an answer. I went to the bedroom and started packing. The apartment was filled with reminders of our life together, but now they just felt like part of a bitter, twisted joke. Once I had the essentials, I rolled my suitcase out of the room. Olivia was still sitting in the same spot on the sofa, her shoulders trembling slightly. Look, I said, stopping by the door. I'm not going to go out of my way to expose what happened between you and Jerry. After all, a scandal wouldn't be good for my professional reputation either. I looked her in the eye. But if you two are planning on going public, you'd better wait until the divorce is finalized. My voice was devoid of any warmth. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to tell everyone exactly how the two of you started your little affair. Her face went pale with terror. Please, don't tell anyone, she whispered. If this gets out, my career is over. Oh, so now you're afraid? I asked, looking at her with pure contempt. Why didn't you think about the consequences before you started sleeping with him? Please, she cried, dropping to her knees and crawling toward me. I'll do anything, just please don't tell. I took a step back in disgust. Get up. Stop the theatrics. I thought you were supposed to be a good actress. Why is this performance so unconvincing? She froze where she was, more tears rolling down her cheeks. Don't worry, I'm a man of my word, I said, extending the handle of my suitcase. As long as you stay out of my way, I'll keep your secret. But if you try anything, I won't, she interrupted frantically. I'll do whatever you want. Good, I nodded. Then we're done here. I walked out of the apartment without looking back. Once I was in the elevator, I pulled out my phone and sent Jerry a message. Director, it's been a pleasure working with you. A moment later, he replied. Who is this? I scoffed and sent him the video I'd recorded at the theater. Then, I turned my phone off. The autumn night air was crisp as I walked out of the complex. I hailed a cab and told the driver to take me to a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. As I sat in the back, I replayed the absurdity of the day in my head. It had been less than 24 hours since I went out to buy her coffee, and now I was getting a divorce. Our entire marriage felt like a carefully orchestrated lie, and I was the fool who had been kept in the dark for 3 years. At least it was over now. I checked into my room and collapsed onto the bed. When I turned my phone back on, it was flooded with missed calls from Olivia. I blocked her number without a second thought. I sent a quick message to my assistant, Jenny, telling her to reschedule all of my appointments for the next day. I set the phone down and stared up at the unfamiliar ceiling, suddenly letting out a laugh. It was pathetic. I'd spent 3 years loving a woman I didn't even know. Now that the veil had been lifted, it was time to settle the score. A week later, I was back at the clinic. Dr. Miller, are you doing okay? Jenny asked cautiously. It was obvious she'd noticed I wasn't my usual self. I'm fine, just needed some time to clear my head, I said, forcing a smile. Are today's appointments confirmed? All set. You have 3 this morning and 2 this afternoon. She handed me the schedule, then hesitated. By the way, Olivia stopped by yesterday. I know, I cut her off. If she comes back, tell her I'm unavailable. Jenny just nodded. She'd worked for me long enough to know when to drop a subject. I went into my office, sat down, and opened my laptop to check my emails. One email immediately caught my eye. It was from a reporter at an entertainment news outlet. Dr. Miller, we've heard there might be some trouble between you and Olivia. Would you be open to a brief interview? A cold smile touched my lips. Jerry had clearly received my little gift. The great director was trying to make the first move, hoping to use the media to pressure me into staying quiet. Unfortunately for him, he'd picked the wrong opponent. I deleted the email and opened a different folder. Inside was everything I'd gathered over the last week. Jerry's travel records, photos of him with various actresses, and tips from industry insiders. I had spent a considerable amount of money hiring paparazzi and leveraging media contacts to get this information. It was expensive, but worth every penny. One document in particular was damning. It detailed years of him coercing and bribing actresses in exchange for roles. There were plenty of victims willing to testify, but no media outlet had been brave enough to break the story. I organized the files and sent a text to a specific number. "It's time. Let's go." The reply came back instantly. "Understood." I set my phone down and checked the clock. My first patient was due any minute. For the next few days, I stuck to my usual routine. I spent my days at the clinic and my nights at the hotel refining my strategy. Olivia was still trying to reach me, but her calls and messages were going nowhere. On the third night, the news I had been waiting for finally broke on Twitter. A massive expose on Jerry was being shared everywhere. The whistleblower was an actress he had coerced, and she had everything: recordings, chat logs, and photos. I lay on my hotel bed, sipping red wine as I scrolled through the news. Before long, more victims began to come forward. Jerry's years of abuse were being laid bare for the entire world to see. Public opinion turned against him instantly, and the outcry was deafening. Late that night, Olivia sent me a text. "You did this, didn't you?" I didn't bother answering. As the scandal grew, Jerry's new film was shut down, investors pulled out, and brands dropped him overnight. Olivia, as his rumored mistress, was naturally dragged down with him. People were digging up all their old photos, and rumors that she'd slept her way to the top began to spread like wildfire. Around noon, she called again. This time, I answered. "Lucas, why are you doing this to me?" she sobbed, her voice frantic. "You know this is going to destroy my career. What exactly have I done?" I asked calmly. "Didn't Jerry light this fuse himself?" "You're getting revenge on me. I know it," she choked out. "Revenge?" I let out a sharp laugh. "I'm simply letting the people responsible pay the price they owe. Don't you love him? He's in trouble. Shouldn't you be out there helping him?" I asked. "I never loved him," she wailed. "It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking. Lucas, please help me. I can't lose everything I've worked for." "You think you're pitiful?" My voice was cold as ice. "When you're cheating behind my back, did you ever consider that you might end up here? Olivia, you're just reaping what you sowed." I hung up and went back to watching the fallout. That evening, Jerry held a press conference to try and clear his name. But as more evidence came to light, every single one of his exits was slammed shut. By that night, his studio issued a statement saying he was taking an indefinite leave of absence. Olivia was caught in the middle of the storm. She was dropped from every lead role she had lined up, and her endorsement deals were being canceled left and right. But this wasn't enough. I opened my laptop and sent another file to several media outlets. It was surveillance footage of Jerry assaulting a young actress on a film set. The footage was a bit grainy, but it was more than enough to prove his predatory behavior. The video went viral almost immediately. No amount of PR could save Jerry now. His career was officially dead. Olivia, who was now permanently linked to him, was being torn apart by the public. Her Twitter mentions were flooded with labels like shameless and homewrecker. She kept calling me over the next few days, but I didn't answer once. For the first time in weeks, I felt a dark sense of satisfaction. Watching that disgusting pair get torn to shreds by the public gave me a thrill of vengeful joy. On the fifth day, Olivia showed up at my clinic. She wasn't wearing any makeup and was dressed in plain clothes, looking absolutely exhausted. But I knew better than anyone that her greatest talent was playing the victim. "What are you doing here?" I asked coldly. "Lucas," she sobbed, the tears starting instantly. "I know I messed up. Please forgive me. I don't care about the money or anything else. I just need your help." Seeing her look so pathetic just made me want to laugh. "What's the matter?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "Back to beg for my help now? Realize Jerry can't protect you after all?" She dropped to her knees. "No, I truly am sorry. I never loved him. It was always you." "Enough," I said, cutting her off with a look of disgust. "Your acting has certainly improved, but I'm not buying it." "I'm not acting," she cried, clinging to my legs. "Lucas, give me one more chance. I can't live without you." I leaned down and looked her straight in the eye. "You want to know the truth? Looking at you right now, just makes me sick." She froze as if I'd slapped her. "Get out," I said. "Stop making a scene." Outside, the scandal surrounding Jerry was only getting worse. The director who once had every award imaginable was now a pariah. His old films were being pulled from streaming services, production companies were suing him for breach of contract, and every brand he represented had cut ties. Olivia had fallen just as far. Her Twitter was a cesspool of hate. Every professional contact she had distanced themselves, and even her agency issued a statement saying they had dropped her. Meanwhile, I went about my life as if none of it had anything to do with me, seeing my patients and working my normal hours. That was until Jerry suddenly barged into my clinic one afternoon. "I bet you're feeling pretty smug right now, aren't you?" he spat, sitting across from me with a contorted face. I looked at him calmly. "Jerry, what on earth are you talking about?" "Cut the act," he sneered. "Who else but you would be behind everything that's happened this week? Do you have any proof of that?" I asked. He lunged out of his chair, pointing a finger in my face. "You're a sick man, Miller. Just because Olivia stopped loving you, you decided to destroy her life?" I stood up and met his gaze. "Watch your tone, Jerry. Your habit of coercing actresses into bed has nothing to do with me." "You?" His face turned a deep, angry purple. "You've ruined my entire life." "Oh," I let out a soft laugh. "When you were preyed on those women, did it never occur to you that this day would come?" He lunged at me, but I stepped aside and easily shoved him back. "I'd suggest you calm down, Jerry," I said, smoothing out my shirt. "There are cameras in here. If you touch me, I'll be happy to give the media another exclusive story." He slumped back into the chair, the fight suddenly leaving him. "What do you want from me?" "What could I possibly want?" I countered. "You too did the crime, and now you're being exposed for it. Isn't that how it works?" "You're insane," he hissed. "Don't you realize you're taking Olivia down with you?" "When she betrayed me," I replied, my voice like ice, "didn't she destroy me too?" He paused for a second, a mocking grin spreading across his face. "You act so righteous, but you're more twisted than both of us combined," he said with a smirk. "You're right," I admitted freely. "I am ruthless. You two love acting so much, so why stop now? Let's see who gets the last laugh." He stood up, his eyes full of malice. "You'll regret this." "I guess we'll see," I said with a thin smile. He slammed the door on his way out, the sound echoing through the office. I sat back down and buzzed Jenny. Back up the last 10 minutes of the security footage. That night at the hotel, I got an anonymous text. "Don't push it, Miller." I knew exactly who it was from, but I wasn't worried. He was barely keeping his own head above water. What could he possibly do to me? Before long, another round of leaks hit the internet. Someone had posted intimate photos of Jerry with several actresses, and Olivia was among them. The photos were clearly private, showing the two of them in a heated embrace. There was no mistaking the nature of their relationship. This was the final nail in the coffin for Olivia. She messaged me almost immediately. "You leaked those photos too, didn't you? You're trying to destroy me. I thought you loved being in the spotlight." I replied, "The whole internet is your stage now. Why don't you give them a show?" She didn't respond. The scandal raged on for nearly a month. Jerry was blacklisted by every major studio. Rumor had it he was already planning to flee the country with whatever money he had left. Olivia, once the industry's darling, was now nothing more than a hated home wrecker and a public laughingstock. One night, she showed up again. She was drunk and intercepted me outside the hotel. "Are you happy now?" she slurred, swaying on her feet. "You've taken everything from me. Is this what you wanted?" she asked, her voice thick with tears. "You're the one who took those steps, Olivia, not me," I said, looking at her with a blank expression. "You've changed," she sobbed. "You used to be so kind, but now you're terrifying." "You're right, I have changed," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "And you're the one who made me this way, aren't you?" She lunged at me, perhaps trying to strike me, but she was so drunk she slipped and fell hard onto the pavement. The hotel security started to move toward us, but I waved them off. "Olivia," I said, kneeling down to her level, "we could have had a quiet civil divorce. I would have walked away and said no, but you were too greedy. You wanted to play me for a fool while having your cake and eating it too. This is just the price you have to pay." She lay there on the ground, her entire body shaking with sobs. "Please help me." He sweared. "I'm sorry." "It's too late," I said, standing back up. "You chose this path, Olivia. Now you have to walk it alone." It wasn't long before Olivia completely spiraled. She posted a long essay on Facebook claiming I was abusive, control freak, and a psychopath. She described our entire marriage as one long, agonizing nightmare. She even claimed her affair was a desperate escape from my control. I found the whole thing hilarious. She clearly worked hard on the script, but it was full of plot holes. She thought she could turn the tide, but she didn't realize she was only making herself look worse. It didn't take long for people to start poking holes in her story. Several of my former patients came forward, testifying that I had always been a patient and gentle therapist. Even our neighbors joined in, posting on Facebook that we had always seemed like a perfectly normal, happy couple. Her carefully constructed lies crumbled almost instantly. She came to see me again that afternoon, looking like all the lies had been drained out of her, her eyes bloodshot. "You won," she rasped. "I have nothing left. I didn't even look up from case files I was doing." "Please," she whispered, suddenly dropping to her knees. "Help me. If you just say a few words in my defense, I might still have a chance." "Do you really think it's going to happen?" I asked, finally looking at her. "You betrayed me. Now you're back here asking for my help. Do I look like a saint to you?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I really am. I never should have done it. You don't regret betraying me," I said with a scoff. "You just regret that you picked the wrong man." She froze. "Olivia," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "The moment you cheated, I saw exactly who you are. You're not a good person. You're just an opportunist who will do anything to get ahead. Too bad for you. You placed the wrong bet this time." She slumped to the floor. You're a monster." "Maybe I am," I said, standing up and looking down at her. "But remember, Olivia, you're the one who turned me loose. If you hadn't betrayed me, I never would have become this way." "So this is how you get your revenge?" she asked. She began to laugh hysterically. "Don't you get it? I have nothing left. My career is over. My name is trash. I'm done." "So what?" I said coldly. "I thought you loved to act. This drama you created for yourself is better than any script you've ever read. Enjoy the role." She stared at me for a moment, then lunged at me like a mad woman. "I hate you, Lucas. I hate you." I easily sidestepped her, watching as she tumbled to the floor once more. "Go ahead and hate me," I said. "The more you hate me, the more successful my revenge is." I walked out, leaving her screams behind me. That was the last time I ever saw her. A week later, the news broke that Jerry had been found dead in his home. The killer was Olivia. After she killed him, she took her own life. The police found a suicide note in the scene. It read, "This is the karma I deserve." I was with a patient when Jimmy burst into the room, looking pale. "Dr. Miller, have you seen the news? Are you okay?" "I'm perfectly fine," I said with a faint smile. "Could you just bring me a cup of coffee?" I was fine. Better than fine. The revenge I had sought had finally reached its conclusion. I suppose the gentle, kind version of Lucas Miller died along with him. But what of it? In this world, who can honestly say they aren't the villain in someone else's story? The most profound act of self-love isn't found in the drama or loud essay, but in the quiet, unshakable resolution to never again be a guest in the heart of the Your capacity for kindness is a superpower, but without boundaries, it becomes self-destruction. Remember that some chapters of life don't end because you fail, but because you outgrew the version of yourself that was willing to accept less than you deserve. So walk away not with bitterness, but with the dignity of someone who has finally realized that the only person you ever truly needed to save was yourself.